My name is Sean Chandler. I've been a full-time YouTuber and movie critic for the last 5 years. I built my own brand on YouTube and essentially was able to turn my hobby into a full-time career. And due to the wonders of social media, I flew into Nashville yesterday not knowing what the Nashville Film Institute is, and Joey reached out and asked if I'd be interested in possibly sharing some thoughts on YouTube, film criticism, movies in general, and I happened to have a space in my afternoon and was very excited to have the opportunity to share some thoughts with you. So I believe he collected some questions yesterday, sent them my way for me to answer, and then hopefully I will be able to finish early enough that I can also take more questions from the room. Is there a specific time I need to be done by? Okay, so aim-ish 25, 30-ish minutes on my first part, and hopefully I can take some questions for about 10 minutes towards the end. But yeah, like I said, hopefully I'll be talking about essentially my story of how I got started, what made me fall in love with movies, how does YouTube work, how do you grow an audience as a film critic and find your voice in that space, and then a few thoughts on movies, and then open it up to questions. So as for me and how did I get started in all of this, well, I started my YouTube channel back in 2016. Oh, which way? There we go. 2016, the Lady Ghostbusters movie came out, and the internet did what the internet does on everything, split in two polarizing different directions, to where one group of people were saying, if you like this movie, it's because you're an idiot, and the other group of people were saying, if you don't like this movie, it's because you're a sexist. I watched the movie and I went, those don't feel like entirely reasonable perspectives. Perhaps there's some nuance in the middle. And the next day, on a whim, decided to post a movie review of the film. This is the actual picture my wife and I took on the date night when we went to go see it. Snapchat filter and all. That's the one that changed this. Going on this date night changed the trajectory of my life, leading to this moment where I'm talking to you, and all we have is this silly picture. And so much so, I just started shooting at a random room in my house, just with the webcam on my computer. My dog is literally behind me on the couch in this picture right here. And 2.5 years later, I was able to turn my hobby into a full-time career talking about movies on the internet. And it's in many ways a dream job because I love watching movies. I love talking about movies. I was talking about movies on the internet for free prior to making any money doing it because I just enjoyed doing it. And then it leads to any number of cool opportunities where I've worked red carpets, interviewed Taika Waititi. A couple weeks back, I was at the world premiere of the movie Abigail that just came out, got to interview Radio Silence on the red carpet. And that's cool. I love movies, and sometimes I get to talk to directors of big, gigantic films, and sometimes I get to talk to classes like this. But that's the suggestion that it only took me 2.5 years to go full-time on YouTube is fairly misleading, because I actually put up my first movie webpage back in, back in 1998, when I was in high school. I put up a Jackie Chan fan webpage and got really into Hong Kong cinema, and Jackie Chan's movie Rumble in the Bronx had come out recently. I loved it. Put up a webpage. If you don't know, he does his own stunts, and he hurt himself like a zillion times, so there's like a picture of his body, and you could click on all of his body parts to figure out in which movie he had hurt himself, which sounded really clever at the time. It sounds really creepy when I say it now, but I put up my first movie webpage back in the 90s. And I kept it up for a while, got up to 1,000 clicks on my webpage. I think 990 of those were me, 10 of those were my mother checking in on me to make sure I wasn't doing something too weird on the internet, which was fairly new at the time, and then I dropped it. And throughout the years, then I had blogs, I had false starts on YouTube. I had 3 years worth of false starts before my current channel actually, I stuck with it. And so many failures all along the way. Yes?
I just wondering what a false start was.
Like I went, I'm gonna do YouTube. And so for 2 weeks, I'd put out a video every day. And then I'd stop. And 6 months would go by and I'd go, I'm gonna do it this time, for real. This time I'm committed. And I would do it once again for 2 weeks, a month, and then I would stop, 6 months off. And so I didn't finally stick with it, consistently posting every week until summer of 2016. And so when I say that it took me 2.5 years, there was actually 20 years of failures, 20 years of things that didn't work, 20 years of things that I didn't stick with before I had the one that actually took off and worked. So that's kind of the quick version of my story of how I kind of got started on here. The question was asked, what made me decide to do movie-related content? Simple answer is just I've always loved movies. And so some of my earliest memories are of going to go see Batman '89 in the theater, and that same summer going to go see Star Trek V at this very small theater in the middle of nowhere, Arizona, that only had one screen and it had a balcony. That's one of my earliest memories. It was going to the movies. And all throughout the 90s, my mother's sister and I, we'd go to Star Trek conventions, we'd collect nerdy stuff. I just always liked that stuff. And then at some point in time, we got our AOL trial disc, which gave us 5 hours of internet in the whole month. It was incredible. And I used my 5 hours of AOL to look up movies on the internet. I remember going to a theater, and I think it was the Independence Day poster, and at the bottom, there was a web page for a movie. And I just thought this is incredible. I can go on the internet and learn about a movie, which sounds ridiculous now, but in the year 1995, that was like a novelty. It was interesting. And even the Jackie Chan fan page I put up, it was a members.aol.com webpage, AOL being America Online, who sent out the free discs to get on the internet. And that's just what I always did. I've always loved movies. I've always loved to learn facts about them. I've always liked to share my opinions on the internet. And so I've just always drifted towards doing that as a hobby. And I've been lucky enough over the last several years that it was able to turn what was a hobby into a full-time career. And I've tried doing some blogs and writing. I'm an okay writer, but I'm not a prolific writer. I'm a very slow writer, whereas I'm better at just being able to turn on a camera, share my thoughts, and apparently people find me engaging, interesting enough to subscribe. And then in my space, I'm Rotten Tomatoes certified. I'm in the Hollywood Critics Association, so my peers have thought that I'm good enough at it to be added into their organizations. Next question, kind of moving into kind of more practical advice about YouTube. First question was, how long does it typically take to prep, film, and edit a single video? The short answer for me is there's no such thing as a typical video. So I'm a movie critic, but I also talk about franchises as a whole. Kind of my channel grew by ranking franchises, so taking watching all the movies in a movie franchise and picking which one's the worst, which one's the best, talking about all of them. And so, how long does it take me to make a movie review? Well, 2 hours to watch it, maybe 30 minutes to write some notes, 30 minutes to film it, maybe a couple hours to edit it, make my thumbnail. Pretty quick. I can watch a Netflix movie in the morning and post my review that afternoon. Last year, I did a ranking of Martin Scorsese's films. He's got over 25 films. All of them are long. Some of them are like 3.5 hours long. All of them are heavy, weighty films that I can't watch with my kids. A lot of them my wife doesn't want to watch. And this is like one of the most respected filmmakers of all time, so I wanted to take it very serious. So, watching 25 movies that are 2 to 3 hours long is 50 to 75 hours just to watch all the movies to do the video. Beyond that, I read 2 different books, one of them called Scorsese on Scorsese, where he talked about all of his movies. Another one's by Roger Ebert, him talking through all of Scorsese's films. I watched hours worth of interviews with Scorsese, all to do one video. So one video took me 3 months and 80 hours. I mean, it took over 2 hours to film it, 10, 12 hours to edit it. Then, earlier this week, the trailer for Deadpool and Wolverine dropped. Decided to do a trailer reaction. I guessed it was going to drop at 8 a.m., so I set my alarm for 8 a.m., woke up, the trailer dropped at 8 a.m., I shot the video, edited the trailer, made a thumbnail, posted it on the internet by 8:40, and was back asleep taking a nap by 9 a.m. One video takes 40 minutes. Another video takes 3 months and 80 hours. So there is no typical. Sometimes it depends on how topical it is. Something like that's about movie news, a trailer, that's present. That's right now. People want to watch it right now. That Scorsese video, it's evergreen. That's like a piece of like the foundational for my content for years to come. People will be like, what does he think about Scorsese's films? What does he think about The Departed, Mean Streets? And they'll look that video up. And so it has an age to it, whereas the Deadpool one, no one cares 3 days later. And so different videos get a different amount of attention to them, take a different amount of preparation in research. Just even for next month, on the trip that I'm on right now, the trip that I'm on right now, I brought a book on the Mad Max franchise as well as the Planet of the Apes franchise, because next month I'll be doing videos on the Planet of the Apes franchise and the Mad Max franchise. So I'm reading through books a month in advance in order to have a more informed opinion on those films than just my kind of gut reaction to watching them straight out of the theater. Next question. How do you find your audience as a movie reviewer? I think there's two sides to that, and they kind of go in two different directions specifically for me, because there's how do you find your audience as a movie YouTuber, and how do you find an audience as a movie critic? There's some overlap, but there's also quite a bit of difference between the two things. As a YouTuber, you're a creative entrepreneur. So what you have to do, entrepreneurs, they look at a market and they look, where is there a hole in the market? Where does the demand exceed the supply for something? So I live in Texas, so everywhere in Texas, there's a barbecue restaurant and a Mexican restaurant, because everyone there loves barbecue and Mexican food. So if you go to a town, and they've got a barbecue restaurant, but no Mexican restaurant, you go, well, there's a hole in the market. Could you open a Mexican restaurant here? Is the city large enough to sustain 2 restaurants? But that's what an entrepreneur does. And that's kind of in the movie YouTube space what you have to do. There's no shortage of movie reviews on YouTube. If you look up any movie that you want to hear an opinion on, there are thousands of reviews for any new movie that comes out. There's no shortage. And so what you have to figure out how to do is figure out what you can offer, where you have specific, unique value to offer. And that's where most YouTubers, they might be good at something, but they haven't done something specific and unique. They're just doing more of the same. And so what are you willing to do that other people aren't willing to do? Like the case for me, watching 75 hours worth of Martin Scorsese films in 3 months, most people can't or won't do that, and they're not going to read 2 books in the process just to do 1 video, because that's an excessive amount, and it's something that most people can't do simply because they don't do what I do full time. So that gives me a unique advantage. It's something I can do that others can't do. Other people are funnier than me. Other people offer a unique spin or perspective, the way that they approach films based off of their background, political ideology, whatever it is, but they have something besides just Abigail movie review or whatever movie comes out. There's no shortage of that video. So what can you offer that's specific and unique in YouTube? As a movie critic, not just the YouTube side to it, I view that my role as a movie critic is to be able to take the ideas in my head, what I felt about a film, and capture it with words, and be able to articulate why I felt a way about a film. Ideally, I can take the ideas that other people had, what they felt about a movie, and articulate their feelings better than they're able to. And so they understand, oh, that's why I didn't like this movie, or that's why I did love this movie. Give some sort of insight perspective, putting ideas and feelings into words. Or equally important, someone totally disagrees with me about a movie, but I have the ability to articulate how I perceived of that film so they see the movie differently. They don't have my experience with it. They might not like it, but they understand why different people had a different experience with that same film. So like last year, the movie The Flash came out. A lot of people hated the movie for a variety of reasons. A lot of people thought it was very mid for a whole variety of reasons. I really connected with the story, and people thought I was crazy. But the reason I connected with the movie is because the story is about someone who lost a parent when they were too young, has the power to undo that, and they get that parent back. My dad died when I was 20. So a story about being able to connect with a lost parent, even in this fantastical scenario where weird, wacky stuff is happening, it's very silly, but there's something very human that I connected with on a deep emotional level. So terrible CGI didn't bother me because of this other stuff in the movie. And as soon as I said that, some people went, oh, I get that. Man, I didn't like the movie still, but I understand why someone else might connect with this movie that they didn't enjoy. And so that's like, for me, I try to read as many books, watch as many interviews, read books on screenwriting, read books about directing. So I have a vocabulary of filmmaking. So when I talk about a film, I have a language that most of my viewers don't have, and I can capture what's happening in a way that they can't. Have a little bit just more knowledge, more backstory, or know how a movie was made. Like, driving over here, I was listening to this audiobook about the making of Mad Max Fury Road, which had an insane backstory of how the film was made. It was just bonkers. It took 20 years of being in full production from they started doing storyboards to the movie came out. And there's certain things in the movie that people connect with because there's so much detail put into it because they worked on it for 20 years. And they did iteration after iteration until this thing finally came out. And that informs why this movie popped in a way so many other action movies haven't popped, or why it was able to do things that other movies weren't able to do. This next question was asked, how does the YouTube algorithm work when it comes to movie-related content? So this is the question that everyone always wants to know. How does YouTube work? How do you get your videos recommended? Things like that. And algorithm is the word used to describe the formulas that YouTube uses to determine which videos it recommends to people on the home screen, on the sidebar, and in search results. YouTube is owned by Google, and therefore the second largest search engine in the world is the search engine on YouTube, and it's owned by the largest search engine in the world. And essentially, YouTube makes their money by putting ads in front of people. So they want people to stay on YouTube as long as possible, and so they've spent millions and millions of dollars trying to develop an AI to try and guess what videos you want to watch next. And they're constantly trying to fix it to better guess what videos you want to watch next. So like one time back when the TV show Cobra Kai came out, I put out a video on the original Karate Kid movies. Video didn't do very well. Did fine, but nothing particularly interesting. Jump forward 2 years, and Cobra Kai was acquired by Netflix. It dropped on Netflix, and all of a sudden its viewership skyrocketed, and people started searching for Karate Kid again. This video I did that had 20,000 views when I first posted it ended up getting 200,000 views 2 years after I posted it, because YouTube is constantly trying to guess what people want, and I created something that people wanted. I just made it 2 years too early, and the algorithm figured out this is what people want now. But so how does the algorithm essentially work? It boils down to really just two things. It's very simplistic at its core. It wants people to click on videos and stick around and watch the videos. It sounds really stupid and simplistic, but at the end of the day, if you stop and think about it, if people don't click, an ad doesn't run. If they click on the video and leave, a second ad doesn't run. So at the base level, you have to be able to come up with thumbnails and titles that entice people to click. Whatever that is, like sometimes you look at YouTube and that thumbnail looks terrible, even though the topic is kind of interesting, or a thumbnail, it looks interesting and the title is very boring, but when there's a combination of a great thumbnail that's enticing with a title that's a subject you're interested in, you click on it. We've all had times we've gone on YouTube, clicked on a video that we thought was going to be great, and then immediately you're like, what is this? This is not what I was searching for, or this is not what I wanted, and so you click away. So you have to be able to create videos that are enticing enough to get someone to click in the first place, and then be engaging enough to get them to stick around. that's not, like, it's so common sense, but everyone wants the secret to how it works, and there's not really a secret. It's fairly straightforward. And so, like, in my case, my first 9 months, I got about 1,000 subscribers, and then I realized that my videos, if I did a movie review, got 100 views, and if I did a movie franchise ranking, it would get 500 views. I'm not great at math, but I could tell that 500 is more than 100, so maybe I should start doing more of these franchise rankings. So for 6 months, I did 1 or 2 franchise rankings every single week of all my favorite franchises going back. At the end of the year, one of my rankings took off and got 300,000 views. So YouTube goes, okay, people liked this video from this guy where he ranks stuff. So it cross-references all of my past videos with the viewing history of these 300,000 people that watched this video. By the time this happened, I had like 4,000 subscribers, so 290,000 people watched my channel for the first time. YouTube cross-references their viewing history with all of these rankings and just starts recommending videos to them. If just 1% of those people liked this other video and subscribed, I would add 3,000 subscribers in a couple of weeks. It took me a year and a half to get my first 3,000 subscribers, and then I added another 3,000 in a week. That's the YouTube algorithm. It doesn't normally do that. That was like my big break moment where it's like, wow, that was crazy. I put out one video, and then there was this trickle down of YouTube recommending other videos to people that led to this gigantic burst in my subscribers. So that's kind of how it works, but it's constantly changing. So what I just described is how it worked 5 years ago. The way that it works more now is subject-based. So if that same thing happened now where someone clicked on this video that got 300,000 views, some of it, instead of it recommending a bunch of my other videos, it goes, people liked the subject of this video. It was the Marvel Cinematic Universe movies ranked. This was in the middle of where all those movies were making $1 billion. So it was in the middle of that. Instead of it going, what other movies has he ranked, franchise has he ranked, it would go, what other channels have talked about Marvel movies? And so there's been this shift with the algorithm that's been kind of infuriating for a lot of us because we built our channels with it working one way, and then it shifted. And so all of a sudden people are like, hey, Sean, I didn't know you put out a review for this. Why isn't YouTube recommending it to me? Like, I don't know. I wish it recommended all of my videos to everybody. But it shifted, and so people that watch most of my videos stopped getting videos recommended to me because the algorithm changed, and it just shifts from time to time. And a big one to talk about with YouTube that you just have to mention, there's a side to it that is absolutely luck. I made some adjustments on the one video that took off, but when it took off, I had 6 months of other videos similar to it. So I had done a lot of work where I didn't see the payoff, so when the luck happened, I was ready for that moment. Even in certain senses, like, getting to talk to you today, I feel very privileged to get to do this. It was kind of a very lucky, random thing that happened. I'm not really supposed to be in Nashville this week, and I just happened to be here. I read my DMs. In the past, I've talked at Concordia College in Austin doing a similar presentation to this. So when someone DMs me and says, hey, would you happen to be able to stop by? Well, he knew that I've done things like this in the past. I read my DMs to be able to see it, and I had an opening in my schedule to be able to do it, and I've just made myself available. So this is a cool opportunity for me, but it came about because I'd set myself up for when luck happened, for when circumstances happened. And so with anything, I think there's a side to it of you can do the prep for when the moment of luck happens. Another question asked was, how do you recommend finding and connecting with, meeting other people that work in the industry? The simple answer is to just be active on the internet and in person. So, like, for me, that's being on Twitter, which is a nightmare, but it's also the place where I connect with all these people that live out in LA. I'm in Texas, so I interact with all these people in LA via Twitter. One of my best YouTube friends, I met him when I was starting out. I just started watching and commenting on his videos, And now he stays at my house a couple weeks every year, and we go to some film festivals in Austin together. A month back, we were in New Orleans for the Overlook Film Festival. And so he's just a friend of mine in real life, but we met literally in the comment section on YouTube. And then likewise, going to things like film festivals, you'll just be walking around and you'll meet at the Fantastic Fest in Austin, like Ryan Johnson and Scott Derrickson, they attend almost every single year, and they're just walking around. The directors of some of the smaller independent films, they're just there all week, present. All of these, in my case, movie critics, YouTubers, were just attending to watch movies. So going to a film festival, you're just present in the same space. So just going to film festivals does like 6 months of networking for me that on Twitter would take forever to meet these people, and then they're just there. And then like, there's a YouTuber named Chris Stuckman, who was one of the kind of OG movie critics. He's now shot a film. It hasn't come out yet, but like that came about because he went to a film festival, Fantastic Fest, in 2019 and met filmmakers at it, built some connections, and then through that was able to get a movie made. And so just be active on the internet. I'm not naturally that person at all. I'm very introverted, so going to a big crowded film festival is not like the place where I thrive. But by doing it, I built all sorts of connections that have helped me out a good bit. Couple questions, a few more on here, and then I'll kind of open up to you guys. But how have you grown as a person from the challenges you faced being a YouTuber? Well, I don't know that I've faced too many terribly big challenges as a YouTuber. I feel very lucky. I watch movies for a living, post them on the internet, and then a bunch of people are excited to hear my thoughts on things. That's cool. And being that I found success in my late 30s, I had jobs before, and they were all harder than doing YouTube. So I feel very, very lucky to be in the position that I'm in, to where kind of on a whim, I was able to travel to Nashville and be like, get a message like, hey, can you come over to this Film Institute tomorrow? Sure, yeah. I feel very lucky to be able to do this, but to give some thoughts on it, I just feel very grateful. That is the word that comes to mind. I'm grateful I didn't have success when I was younger, because it would have messed me up. It would have messed with my mind. I would have felt entitled in many other things. I had some struggles in my personal life to where the fact that I'm on the other side and found success, I appreciate it. I appreciate the fact that people watch my channel, send me DMs, want to meet me. All of those things mean something to me because I found success late enough in life and after enough failures that it has meaning to me. I would say, I don't know, there's a certain time you grow thicker skinned and you learn not to you don't let the comments blow up your head or get you down too much. You just learn to realize that there's useful feedback, and most stuff on the comment section is not particularly useful. But I wouldn't say that I faced enough challenges to grow, because I had a lot of that before I was on YouTube. Final one that I'll kind of tackle on here and then open it up. Question was asked, in your opinion, what do you think makes a great film? And it's a question that I find interesting to answer because films are so many different things and can be done for so many different purposes. Films are art. Well, art is subjective. We all respond to art differently. The film business is a business, so they exist to make money. And so there's fantastic movies that lose money, and there's terrible movies that make $1 billion. Well, as a business thing, that was a great film for the purposes of business, while at the same time not being particularly great. Movies are for entertainment, but we're entertained by different things. Movies are meant to make us laugh, but we laugh at different things. Movies can scare us, but some people don't like to be scared. Some people love a ton of gore in a movie. Some people can't handle a drop of blood. And so when it comes to what does it mean for a movie to be great, even beyond that, most movies are narrative-based, but not all of them. And so when I was trying to come up with a broad enough set of questions for what makes for a great movie, that it captures all of that. So the first question that came to mind was, does it accomplish its intended purpose for its intended audience? And different movies have a different intended audience. And not every movie, most movies are not made for everyone. And does it work for the people it's supposed to work for? Like for me, I've never connected with Studio Ghibli films. People adore them. And I get it. Like I could watch them and be like, this is so creative. It's so different. There's so much talent on display here, but my wiring is just not that. Does that mean that Studio Ghibli is bad? Of course not. I'm the weird one that doesn't like them. Doesn't mean that there's not greatness there. Yes?
What's your favorite Studio Ghibli movie?
I don't have one that I've connected with. I haven't seen a ton of them, but like watched Boy and the Heron last year, and just it's so not on my wavelength with the way that they're designed as visual poetry and metaphors that I've been asking people what's the one that you in people that know me and my taste in movies to try and find the one that maybe can be a better on-ramp for me than some of the ones that are a little bit more dream logic, that I'm just not wired that way. So I watch them and I just can't connect with it. But that doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean that these are bad films because they're not for me. And I think that ties into so much of it. Second question, does it offer something new in the genre? There's so many movies that come out that are slick studio films. Technically, they're in focus. They have movie stars that know how to act and be charismatic, but they don't do anything new or different. So they're fine. They're entertaining enough, but they're not great because there's nothing new there. Does the movie have a unique perspective, voice, flavor? Does it just feel like a generic product? Where there's certain movies you watch them and you think, only that director could make this film. There's even Studio Ghibli. They're so distinct. Miyazaki, where you see it and you go, this one guy makes this film, and it's art. It is something special and unique. And then you watch a lot of studio films, and they're very clearly overproduced, overdeveloped, rewritten, reshot, focus grouped, and so there's no distinct voice to it. They're in focus, they're slick, they're expensive, but there's nothing personal about any of it. It just feels like a generic thing. What is the difficulty level of what the film accomplishes? There's movies that are good, entertaining, but they're fairly straightforward. And there's movies that are incredibly ambitious and they fail at their big ambitions, which makes reviewing two movies that are very different and you give them the same score for wildly different reasons. This is a very simple film, but it did what it was trying to do. This is a very ambitious film with all sorts of ideas. It didn't quite capture it, but I respect the ambition. They get the same score, but they're wildly different films. And so sometimes it factors in how difficult is it to do what this movie is trying to accomplish. And the last one, does it make the audience feel something? How many movies they're fine, but they don't elicit any sort of reaction from the audience. And I think even of the this past month, the movie Civil War came out, and some people watched it and they loved it. Some people watched it, they thought it was utter garbage. Other people watched it it was cool, but it was empty and hollow. Other people watched it and they thought it was incredibly deep. It was a movie that everyone who saw it had an opinion about it. And you think, how many movies can it do that? They don't elicit any response from an audience because they're just bland. So with all that said, just kind of open it up to questions for a few minutes. Yes, in the back.
Yes, sir. My name is Eddie. We're happy to have you.
Thank you
for showing up. My first question is, it's actually kind of a two-parter. Now that you're a successful YouTuber, what motivates your consistency?
In terms of continuing to put out content?
Yes.
Well, I would say some of what makes it the personality traits that I think make it so someone can succeed on YouTube as an independent creator is just that built-in desire to just create things. Part of my wiring has always been, at the end of the day, I like something new to exist because I was on this planet. And so for years I was in bands, wrote songs, I had these web pages. No one heard any of the music I ever created because I wasn't good enough, but for me, I wanted something to exist. And there's just some of that built-in drive is part of what it takes, that built-in motivation to succeed in a space like that where there's so much competition and there's so much urgency to keep creating. I think some of it is constantly trying to find new, interesting challenges. So even being here is something different for me. Like, this is a cool opportunity, and it's something new and different as opposed to just making YouTube videos, talking about making YouTube videos. Some of it is continuing to evolve what I'm doing, where I'm trying to do more interviews with directors and things like that. So just even in the last couple of weeks, reached out for a bunch of different upcoming films to see if I can do interviews to add something new into what I'm doing. And even as I'm trying to do some of these franchise rankings, doing my movie reviews for their films, factoring in what they have to say about their film into the review itself, and just continuing to grow, having more perspective. Like, I didn't used to read a book for each franchise ranking. That was as I just wanted to get better and better and have more to say that was worth people's time. Did that answer your question?
Do you still film and edit your own content?
I have yes is the short answer. I have a second channel where I have someone where I clip out segments from live streams and I have someone edit those. On the main channel, thus far I still do. And that it's one of those ones where kind of the economics of being a full-time YouTuber, part of the concept is I'm essentially the editor for myself, and that's how it can work. I'm kind of right at that point to where I go, if I wanted to build this out larger, I need to build out a team so I can spend time doing other things, but I don't want to be a boss. And so I'd rather do the work myself and have a cap on the size of what I can build out my brand to be. At least up to this point in time, as soon as you have an editor, as soon as you have people helping with things, have a team, now all of a sudden, instead of just being a content creator for myself, I'm a boss of it, and it's a different job. And so that's essentially something I've been wrestling with in my mind for a while of, I know my workflow, I know how long it takes me to do this, I know how to do it. Do I want to shift my role in my business, in my brand?
This summer, I remember seeing Oppenheimer opening day in 70mm IMAX, and watching it, like when the bomb is ticking. I remember I was so terrified,
Right.
sitting in the theater because I thought it was like actually going to like happen. And then by the end of the movie, I was even more terrified because I'm like, this is the future. And when I walked out of the theater, I was like, that is the best experience I've ever felt watching a movie. Have you ever felt like that in the theater?
So I mean, to the point of that movie, I left the theater thinking, I feel the world is more dangerous having seen that film because of the whole point of the movie of entering this nuclear age with this new threat. It was like, I left on that movie, like, oh, that, in danger. I mean, to continue on the Nolan topic, Memento came out right after I graduated high school, and it was one of the first movies I saw where I hadn't seen a trailer, and my friend went, there's this movie, it plays backwards, it's only playing at one theater in town, and up to this point in time, I only watched movies with spaceships and aliens blowing up the planet, and then I go to this little art house theater in Austin, and this movie plays backwards, and I'm like, wait, movies can do that? They're not just about explosions, they can blow your mind without blowing things up. So that movie, Memento, was one of those formative films of just like opening my mind and seeing what cinema can be outside of just basic entertainment. I don't know if that's specifically the direction we were going with, but that's kind of where my mind kind of drifted in terms of movies that just immediately felt like there was a shift for me because of that, specifically in the movie world, but yeah. Do you have a question?
I mean, like, how would you do with, like, Burnout in, like, the middle of making, like, maybe, like, a super long video? Like, I mean, like, I animate for longer videos, and that, like, takes, like, a long ass time, so, like, how do you, like, deal with it? I'm like, oh my god. You know?
Yeah, that's where, talking about some of these rankings that take me 3 months, Some of them have been even longer than that. I did one with all of the Disney animated films. There's like 70 of them. And so some of it was fun to watch them with my kids, but I reach a point in time where it's like, well, this is just work. This is just unpleasant. And the joy in that moment wasn't there. And so some of it is just always reminding myself of both the goal of the project itself as well as how that project fits into my larger goals. And knowing that this sucks right now, this is tedious, I don't want to watch another animated film, or I don't want to draw. Like, I'm just so tired of doing this, but also reminding myself of the joy that I felt when I finished a project like this, and knowing I know that this is important to have the career, the resume that I want. I have to push through this to get to the other side in this moment. The place where I tend to feel more the burnout is the social media side to it. That's where it takes an emotional toll, where you reach part of how I grew my channel was being very accessible and responding to comments and everything like that. And you reach a point in time and people stop thinking you read the comments. And so you just go in your comment section, people say the worst things imaginable and be like, oh, sorry you didn't enjoy the video. And then they respond back, oh, dude, I love your videos. I was drunk last night. I was just messing around. Like, well, you told me you hated me. You thought it's what are you talking about? And so some of it, like, you just read a comment and you can hear 10, 20 people say that you're great. And that one person that comments on something you're insecure about, it erases all the positive comments. And then in the world of social media, if you put your opinions out there, about every 6 months, someone will find some 30-second block in something that I said, clip out everything before it, drop it on Twitter out of context, framing it in some light, and you're like, that's not what I said. That's not what I meant. You literally removed the part right before this where I said something totally different, and 100,000 people are like, this guy's an idiot. Like, well, first off, I am an idiot, just not for that reason right there. And that creates a scenario where it's like, why am I doing any of this? Like, the fun of putting my thoughts out there disappears when you just feel like you're getting emotionally beaten up by it. And so, like, for me, at certain points in time, I have to put it restrictions, have to have breaks from social media, have to be able to step away to not get burnt out by the things that burn me out. So some of it is just even as you go through different projects and you realize what causes you to start feeling burnt out, how can you go into the next project and set yourself up more for success? Like, learn from what caused me in this one at this moment to feel this way. What can I do to space this out or make changes to the process? Burnout is one of those ones that's tough because we're all wired differently and experience it for different reasons, and it's tough to have a simple solution to it. Did you have a question?
Well, no, I wanted to add to that. For some reason, when I'm on social media or commenting on something or putting out my own videos, I'm really good at ignoring those comments. I know it sounds easy, just saying out loud, but because I've heard of people losing everything because of that one comment. Yeah. And I just don't get those. I don't get that dread, like, oh, I suck, because of this one comment. So.
Yeah, it's we're all wired differently, and some certain comments just totally bounce totally off, just don't faze me at all. And then they make that one comment about that thing I'm just a little bit insecure about, and suddenly I care. Or for me, I'm enough of a people pleaser, and I'm naive enough. I always think I can win people over. Like, oh no, you think that just because you misunderstood me. Here, let me explain it to you. Like, that doesn't work on the internet. And so, like, I've had to. So many people, it's easy for me to go down that rabbit hole of trying to convince people over the internet, which it just doesn't work. And so knowing that about myself, I realize, like, there's people I have to mute. There's people that I'm friends with in real life that I have to mute. They're great in real life. They're weird on the internet. And they're just so caustic and abrasive on the internet. Like, you're not that person. Why are you doing this on the internet? And just, I have to cut things off because it just drains the life out of me.
One thing that I tried at one time is like one time when someone was being a little bit like catty to YouTube when I posted like an art progress video, like what my art was like 4 years ago compared to right now. And like they said like, is it bad? Like sorry, I laughed at the result, and I didn't want to say that. One thing I tried to kill them with kindness.
Right.
So I just like, agree with them. And I was like, yeah, I know. Yeah, we'll take your comment. And then like, their attitudes kind of, I felt like changed when they wrote mine, and I was like, yeah.
And when I have the moments where I can do that, generally, if you kill them with kindness, you just disarm whatever they're trying to do, because if they're trolling, then you haven't given them anything to do. If they're legitimately saying something harsh, you should think like most people, they wouldn't say any of this to your face. It's over the internet. There's not a person there, so they forget they're talking to a person. So they say stuff they would never say. So as soon as you respond like a person, it reminds them they're talking to a person, and then they're like, oh yeah, I phrased that a little bit harshly. But yeah, it's been interesting, because when you have success on the internet, it's not like you suddenly have a class on how to deal with having a lot of people that have an opinion about you. And the way the internet sometimes works is you can very quickly shift from not having an audience to having an audience. And you just have to kind of learn by example and through a lot of failure of what that looks like to process it. One more question?
What's your Nolan movie?
Inception, probably. Like, I love comic book movies and Batman, so The Dark Knight's way up there. I love origin stories, so Batman Begins is way up there. But like Nolan for me is like a top 3 director, so his top 8 movies are all movies that I love. But Inception's probably the one where I just go, that is such an ambitious idea that you pulled off. And it's visually interesting, the action's exciting, it's thought-provoking, there's just a lot in there. And so that's often the one that wows me the most. Any final questions? Last one.
So if you do like a video on like a movie that came out in the 40s, and then your next video is like a movie that just came out today, how vast of an audience change is that?
See, that's the trick of the building an audience of, if I were to put out a review of a 1940s movie, that's not my audience at all. So no one's going to watch it. I'm a 42-year-old teenager. I'm very childish by nature. And so that's my audience. It's people that are much younger than me. And so that wouldn't work for me. But there's other people that's their whole brand, is that they love the golden age of cinema. And that's the perspective that they bring also to new movies. Like, oh, these Hollywood slick productions that don't have the heart of these old films. And so then it kind of depends on the audience that you've built. What are they coming to your channel for? Mine, because I built an audience ranking franchises, it's a lot of people that like big franchises. They're not watching Citizen Kane or Casablanca. I like to think, and I try to be an on-ramp, that people discover my channel because of the new Marvel movie that came out, and then I point them to something else, and they slowly start to discover other things. But like, it's kind of, you have to figure out what that audience is for your channel, and how do you find the through line of what makes sense. And sometimes it's weird the way that audiences connect with batches that aren't obvious, and the YouTube algorithm struggles to figure out what that is. And so that's why some YouTube channels, they'll just be about one specific franchise, because the YouTube algorithm celebrates that. And so I don't want to do that. So that's probably limited my growth, because I want to branch out and cover more things than that. So like for me, the Scorsese ranking was very different, because it's covering a career that spans back 60 years. But that was very rewarding for me in a way that might not be rewarded by the algorithm. I don't know if that answers your question or is too rambly, but all right. Hey, thank you guys so much.